podcast listener friends. This is your old pal Mark and your old pal Pete here to give you a delicious serving of nuggety fitness business goodness. Pete, how are you doing today besides my use of the term nuggety?
How am I doing? Well, hello. And I'm a little intimidated by the subject matter we're about to dive into. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, well, we will get into some stuff about AI today, right? And I think the thing that is fun, which maybe will be interesting or not, is I don't know that either of us actually consider ourselves like AI masters, but does seem to me, and certainly Pete, I'll be curious for your 2 cents on this. In the last few months, we've really seemed to reach a tipping point where, holy cow, it's been happening for a while, but not only has the technology continued to advance, but I think there is a certain quickening of the adoption of its constant daily use for many people I know, both inside and outside the industry. So we just want to share a little bit about what we're seeing, what we think is effective that gym owners can use to grow their business, to work more efficiently. I'll also talk about some of the things I see as pitfalls. I think it's still not doing as well. I think is maybe leading some people astray. But before we dig into that, a gentle reminder. You like free stuff? Well, we like free stuff. We want to give you free stuff because we like you. So go ahead, click the linky loo here in the show notes to this here podcast. And today, I'd love for you, if you haven't already downloaded yet, you have a real opportunity to click my book of fitness business secrets, which is a collection of lessons, stories, and true life shenanigans from the world's only multi-million-dollar glittery fitness unicorn cult. So this is a collection of stories and lessons that I've learned in my years of running Mark Fisher Fitness, which loyal listeners know we've sold just a couple months back, but it was a solid 14-year run, I think, a 13-year run. And this book I wrote, I think about 11 years in. It's actually a compilation of a bunch of blog posts and emails that I had written for Business for Unicorns. So if you are a gym owner looking to avoid some of the scraped up knees that I have on created for myself, avoid some of my missteps, and hopefully learn from some of the things we have done well at Mark Fisher Fitness, you want to check out the book. It's instant download. You can literally just click the link in the show notes below and it'll zoom right into your inbox.
It's a great read.
Well, all right. Now that, yeah, it's a great read. Great read. Check it out. Check it out. Lots of Mark magic. So let's talk about AI. So Pete, yeah, I'm curious if you want to begin here. I sprung this on you before we hit record, and you had mentioned using AI a lot. I think I heard you said you were using it basically all day, every day. You mentioned not being entirely sure you're using the most sophisticated way. Yeah, give us the juice. Give me and the listeners the rundown. How are you using AI in your business?
Don't be misled and think that I'm AI proficient is what I would say. I'm using it all day, every day because a friend and mentor, when I told him I wasn't using it, it seemed that he wanted to punch me in the face. And I asked him what the baby step was to begin using AI in general. He asked that I remove the Google app from my phone and replace it with ChatGPT. And he said, just for a couple of months, use ChatGPT as your Google and see where you land. And so that is how it initially became. I'm using it all day. Yep. It's just, yep. It's kind of my default mechanism for all things search. And it's been wonderful. Since I think every single day I'm discovering new and interesting ways that it is going to be useful to me, but I'm so incredibly intimidated by AI as a whole. And it's kind of like drinking through a fire hose. And so right now I am almost exclusively using it for cleaning up my writing and thinking more creatively, honestly, about things I've already published. It's helping me look at my old material and bring it back to the forefront in creative and articulate ways.
Cool. Yeah. So a lot of that maps with how I'm using it. So one thing I heard there is essentially using it as a replacement for Google.
Yep.
Which, I confess that's probably the main way that I use it. I do use it for more creative work tasks too, which we'll talk about more in a moment. But same. If you are somebody who's not gotten your arms around this yet, or even you've been using it for work stuff, but not as a search replacement, I think it's worth checking out. I would also suggest, ChatGPT is so affordable. It's probably worth paying the extra money for it. I think the other platform that I have used, Perplexity.ai, is another search alternative. Now, it's worth knowing everything is maybe congealing in the right direction here, because Google now, of course, if you go to regular Google and search it, it's now going to often have AI give you the answers sometimes, not all the time. But I do find that I prefer the more conversational tone of just asking ChatGPT. The other pro tip I'll give you here too that is worth considering, that was for me was a real inflection point in my adoption of AI, was not only downloading Chat GPT but doing the speak to text function. So I now just talk into it. I rarely ever type, particularly on my phone. I type on my computer, but on my phone I just talk into it, and I'll just ramble as needed. And it's actually faster for me to ramble somewhat incoherently, and then I just upload it because ChatGPT doesn't need me to dial it in. I can just ramble, and that's fine. Um, Maybe we'll come back to that in a moment, because I've actually found long form rambling actually is also very, very helpful. Now, to be clear, the way that I prefer to use it, which I'm not necessarily saying needs to be the way that you use it, is I don't prefer listening to ChatGPT as voice back. It can speak to you, but I read much faster than I can listen. So I prefer to speak to ChatGPT, but then read its responses. And that's how I use it for Google. So, Pete, a follow up question for you. So as we transition a little bit to how else we might use it for work, can you tell me a little bit more, maybe a specific example of how you have used it with your content creation? I think you mentioned freshening up older content ideas. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I've made kind of my metaphorical social media living on publishing on Twitter and then putting it on Instagram and screenshots. And at some point, I think it was my wife said to me, "You've written like 200 blog posts since 2015. There's a lot of words there just kind of like living in the ether, and maybe you could bring it back with ChatGPT." So what I do is I'll just go and I'll pull an old blog post, maybe a short form or long form one, and I'll drop it into ChatGPT with the prompt saying, summarize this in a length that would fit a tweet, or I'll pull a small section, and then I'll ask it to change the tone a little bit, and then I will just kind of rewrite my own words from there. But what it does is it just helps me make old material fresh again. And it's funny, it's just better at summarizing my thoughts than I am. Like, it makes me realize how poorly written a lot of those old blogs were. And so it just makes it so that I can utilize a lot of hard work that I put in a long time ago in a new and updated way. And I've even rewritten a few of these blogs since, just because the topic is kind of changed, and as we've discussed in other things, old material changes because best practices change. But totally. Honestly, it's shocking at how good it is at matching my tone if I ask it to. And that's kind of concerning to me.
Yeah. Another thing that one can do there, if you're looking to get to match tone, I think whether this is I don't know if this is actually true or just my own bias, because I want to think I'm special. I've struggled a little bit with chat because we did upload a lot of my writing and actually created Mark GPT. So my Chat GPT, Rosemary and I call Mark GPT. But it's interesting because I think literally I just made a note of this. I want to actually separate the business GPT from my personal one, in part because I don't need my whole search history to be Rosemary. I'm like, right, yeah, can I drink with this toenail fungus medication I'm on? Anyway, TMI, everybody. But I think that is part of it. It's also because, frankly, Mark GPT is a little annoying, right? And I think this is an example of where it's just not quite there, and it's getting there. Because now if I write, hey, ChatGPT, I was in South Africa the reason. I'm like, South Africa, can you let me know what are the top 5 to 10 ranked cocktail bars in South Africa? And its response will be like, "Ah, how excellent! The fabulous search for elegant, elevated elixirs. Fear not, dearest. I'll help you." It's like, so it's doing like the most on the nose, over the top version of me that it's actually insulting. I'm like, and also sometimes I just want a response. And my ChatGPT always answers any question with like, "Ah, jet setting across the continent for the holidays, are you?" And I'm like, okay, just settle down. I'm not that bad. So, however, it is worth knowing, as Pete said, another potential action step, if you're looking for it help with your content, you can upload it, particularly if you have, let's say, Google Docs worth of either email content or any way you can conveniently get it a bunch of text you've written, and it can learn to some extent to create a facsimile of your brand voice. Now, again, I think the more extreme and eccentric and human you are, perhaps the harder it is to 100% nail. But if nothing else, it does a nice pastiche and is worth doing, because there's probably really no harm to do it. If you're going to have it write any first drafts, you might as well get in the direction of your personal brand and tone.
Can I tell you how I've been using it lately? And it's been like a total game changer at work for me.
Oh yeah,
Um,
what's that?
so we hire a lot of young coaches, and they're just like exceptional technicians who are like borderline the worst writers on the planet. And I say this to their face in our staff meetings,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I'm not like fingers crossed hoping they don't hear
Not
this.
talking out of turn.
Yeah.
Say it if they were here. Yes.
But somewhere along the line, the art of like grammar and things gets minimized in importance. I don't know, with recent generations. And it was a problem for me because I had to just micromanage everything and very thoroughly look at what was going outbound in our email account. And I recently had an assignment for one of my pitching coaches because I was like, this parent keeps asking for this insight. They keep asking for like a summary of where we're at the end of the off season and where we were, where we've gone, where are we going, how are things going heading into the season. And it was for like a parent that's like notoriously difficult. And their reaction was like, F this guy. I'm so sick of this guy. I cannot even bring myself to do this. Here's what I want to write. And he says like, boom, 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 boom. And I was like, you know what? I want you to write that. I want you to write that in that exact tone and just send it to my personal email account. Like write it all. Let all of your emotions go. And then I just drop it in and I say, make this kinder. Like, take the edge out of this.
Nice.
And keep the substance of like the bullet points associated. And I ended up with like a wonderful email that only made that pitching coach look more articulate and intelligent. And I didn't have it to force him to filter. He like,
Yep.
It was almost like therapeutic for him. He said, he's like, fuck this. All right, I'm going to let it rip. And then what came out on the other end was like tidy and professional.
Yes.
And it actually checked all the boxes that the parent asked for. And so for me, I felt like everybody won. And now my attitude is like, if I make an ask of you and you're frustrated with the client, go ahead. Let that bleed into the tone of the message you send in V1.
We'll clean it up. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I think there's sort of three big pieces when I think about how I currently use ChatGPT for work, right? At least, well, I'll say for content, right? I have some other ways I think it can actually be useful, even partnering on strategy. But particularly when talking about writing, which is something I think a lot of people think about using AI for. The first thing I'll note is not being a full expert on it. I've actually heard from a number of reputable friends. They actually like Claude from Anthropic better for writing and copying than ChatGPT. Simple guy over here, simple guy just using his ChatGPT over here. So I haven't used Claude, but I just want to say that out loud for people that are listening. But I want to give like a 3-step framework for how I think about using ChatGPT for content. I think there's 3 places that it gets useful that actually maps to how I think about the content creation process. There's the brainstorming ideation, there is the writing, and there's the editing, right? Those are always going to be the 3 pieces, right? You're thinking of the topic, you're etching out your bullet points, you think like, what problem am I solving? What question am I answering? What is the framework? What is the story I'm going to use? What are the bullet points, right? Then you put the meat on the bones. Then you actually write the thing. And you write drunk famously, right? The first draft's not going to be good. You write to one person, you write like you speak, you write the first draft. And then the third piece is you edit it. Now you edit sober, right? So you go back in and this has to be another session. You can't usually effectively edit something you just wrote. You tighten up, you get rid of the unnecessary words, you read it out loud, and you make it more coherent and make it good, right? Because the first draft is not going to be good. So those 3 pieces, AI can be used for all of them. My personal opinion is if you're good at writing, it's least valuable to you in the actual initial drafting. If you're bad at writing, it's most valuable to you in the initial drafting. So here's what I mean. I think almost anybody can benefit, particularly if you get stuck writer's block, you're not sure what to write about. ChatGPT can help brainstorm ideas and topics, particularly if you feed it deep information about the avatar. And remember, you can do this, just ramble in your phone. Just tell them all about your favorite clients and then ask for 50 topic ideas for problems and solutions or questions and answers that map to things that your prospects actually care about, right? They're hot buttons using the words your prospects are using in their head. So when you're sending out emails, posting on social, it's something that's attractive to the prospect, right? So chat's gonna be very helpful with that. It can
Hey
also
there, Business
help.
for Unicorns podcast listeners.
If you haven't had a chance yet to leave us a rating and a review on wherever platform you listen to this podcast, it would be so awesome if you take just a quick second to do that. And here's why. Number one, by leaving us a rating and review, you'll allow our podcast audience to grow so more gym owners can build a life and a gym they love. And number two, by leaving us feedback, you'll help us shape the future of the podcast so we know what you like, we know what you don't like, and we know what types of content is resonating and what else should we create for you. Thank you so much for your consideration. And now back to the show. It's going to be very helpful with that. It can also help. And I usually do this after I've written the first draft, but I will often go back in and have chat help with two things. One, the subject line, to make sure it gets open. So I'm usually going to ask for a lot of subject line ideas. And two, for the hook, for the lead, right? The lead's got to bleed, not literally blood, but the lead's got to bleed. It's got to be something that hooks them in because you're selling the rest of the email. Particularly, I tend to write long form. Most of you probably shouldn't, but that tends to be my approach. For the actual writing, for the second piece, like I mentioned, I think if you're good at writing and you're human, that right now is the killer app. That's the thing that I think humans on some level can kind of pick up. Where the place I see this, where this is endemic right now is actually podcast summaries. I don't know if you've noticed this, Pete, but podcast summaries have become horrible. They become horrible. I won't name names, but particularly in the fitness industry, because I listen to all of them, the podcast summaries are, in this scintillating conversation, such and such will, it's such clear AI, which again is fine for some things, right? If you just need something to just make it done and be fast, but there's usually a bloodlessness to it for now. And again, frankly, it's probably going to change in 1 to 3 years. The AI continues to evolve so quickly, it's kind of shocking. But I think the actual writing piece, if you're good at writing, you probably want to get your humanity in there from the get. Alternatively, if you're bad at writing and you just need something because maybe you're a Unicorn Society member and I'm yelling Shigata email once per week, then don't worry about it, right? If you're not a big writer anyway, who cares? It can do the first draft. Just know it's like an intern. You're going to have to edit. It's a very good intern, but you'll still have to edit it, particularly if you want to add some humanity and some of your voice and brand in it. And then again, the third piece is the editing piece, which I think Pete just spoke to there, which is you can then, and I don't do this for everything I write, but particularly if you're doing like landing pages or something that maybe requires a little more persuasion, you can copy paste it in and have the AI beat it up, right? And ask where it can be improved, where it can be tightened, where it can be more persuasive. So it can be a thought partner to you when you're looking to make your content as good as you can. Now, again, I do think at a certain point you have to consider when it's good enough, right? So if you're doing, maybe like a landing page or maybe something like ad copy that you're going to spend a lot of money on for paid ad strategy, probably more important to really nail that. If you're very prolific, and I just nature of what I do professionally, unlike a lot of gym owners, it's just the sheer volume of what I have to do. It would be nauseating to most of you. So because of that, sometimes I'm just like, this is good enough. I've been doing this for a while. But for those of you that agonize over the creation of content, I think those are some ideas for how you can leverage AI. So I have a few other things that I think might be worth jamming on, both for business and actually non-business stuff. But Pete, I'll pull up there, curious for any sort of additional insights or observations you have about that little brain dump.
That was not a little brain dump, Mark. That was a solid Mark brain dump.
It is a solid toilet clogging brain dump. Gonna get plunger off that one.
Quick and not important observation. I hate how many exclamation points I get out of the content that is created for me. I find that it fills the I'm talking.
So it makes you. It also makes you very like, "Hi, I'm Pete."
Yeah, I'm probably just messing up in the prompts, but it is.
I don't think I've ever seen you use an exclamation mark.
Exactly, I don't get it, but I'm getting. I might have like let's say it turns out 400 words of content. There might be like 6 exclamation points in there, and I mean, one at a max is enough for me. And I don't understand why that's happening. I'm sure I'm messing up. That's user error, I'm sure. Second, I want you to make a compelling pitch for me why I need to start paying attention to podcast summaries, because I have to admit I don't read any of them. The only time I ever get there is if somebody says like link in bio or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I do it regularly. I think they just have, catch my eye. Because sometimes I will look at it to decide if I'm going to listen or not, because I subscribe to every, remotely related to the fitness industry podcast. And I don't listen to all of them at this point because there's, a lot of things I can be doing with my content time. So I will often use the summary to see if I want to listen to it or not.
Okay.
And some of them, actually, the summary now for Better For Us is like tells you everything you need to know, and then I never listen to the podcast anymore because I'm like, oh, that's about okay. But at any rate, it's only because that's how I'm deciding if I'm going to listen or not that I catch upon the descriptions. And I don't know if it's true or not, but they they seem pretty clearly written in sort of a robotic, faux professional ChatGPT way. But no hate, just an observation.
Just a little lazy. I get it. Unrelated, as I was preparing for an upcoming retreat presentation that I'll be giving to our community, I was telling you off the record that studying behavioral science and stuff like that. And I went down kind of the rabbit hole about the words that we use mattering, obviously. And I came across a statistic saying that of the people who, like, they did a big survey, and of the people who didn't listen to podcasts, they found out that 47% of them thought podcasts cost money because they use the word subscribe on the button on Apple Music. And that's why they pivoted away from subscribe to follow.
To follow.
Because 47% of people thought, no, I'll take a pass. I'm already spending on enough subscriptions.
I can't give you money for this. Wow, that is hilarious. Wow, interesting.
Yep.
I think, I mean, I have maybe two other.
I want to hear how you're using it in your personal life.
Yeah, I mean, so certainly in my personal life, obviously a lot of it is this Google stuff, but like a couple examples, in addition to the more obvious things you might Google, right? So I could have Googled top, cocktail bars in Cape Town, right? So that's clearly a Google. However, what I did recently, I thought was interesting and helpful, if admittedly it wasn't necessarily like new information. So we're getting a little bit in the weeds about how Mark approaches his health, but as will not surprise our longtime listeners, Mark is somewhat retentive, I guess would be the a word for it. And so every year for the past several years, I do an executive health summary. So I have a list of prompts that I've come up that it's not a very long document, but it's maybe like a 2-page, maybe 3-page Google Doc that I review my year in health and fitness. I review my habits. I look at my data tracking. I look at trends from year to year, and I prepare that mostly for myself, but also to prepare with my doctor, Dr. Spencer Nadolsky. Shout out. A lot of you know him. Before we do our yearly call check-in, and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm focused on this year. This is what I think I could do better this year ahead. So I took my both executive health summaries and my labs and my blood work over the past 3 to 4 years. I fed it all to ChatGPT, and I was like, tell me what's going on. Tell me about trends. What are you observing? What do you think is there anything else I think I need to be looking into? Like, it was pretty good. Now, again, ChatGPT is not perfect. I think now is as good a time as any in a conversation to offer one very, very important qualification is ChatGPT is like the most violent Dunning-Kruger that ever lived, which is to say that ChatGPT definitionally will never speak in any qualified manner. It will never speak tentatively. It will never offer, hey, I don't know if I got this right, but I think this is probably the right thing. It will always speak like the oracle. And just as, unfortunately, the nature of humans, this, harkens to your comments about behavior psychology, Pete, people really attracted to certainty. I don't know if you all have noticed this being a human. People really like certainty. And unfortunately, there's actually like a pretty tight correlation between really certain people and not always super expert people, not people that don't have deep knowledge. And the challenge with chat is it speaks so authoritatively that we all need, and I'm saying this for myself as much as anybody listening, to remind ourselves this is not the Oracle of Delphi, right? Chat is not going to be perfect. It's going to hallucinate. It's designed to speak so authoritatively that this is a little bit of an issue. Anything from when you're asking it for feedback on strategy for your business, or if you're asking it for feedback on, your landing pages, your emails, because here's the other thing to understand. You're asking it for, let's say, here's an example of this. If you're asking it for feedback on an email, if you keep asking for feedback, it's going to keep giving you feedback. It's never going to say, this is good enough. It's just going to keep finding more things. And at a certain point, how many rounds of revisions do you need to do, right? And not only that, but to prove how silly this is, just to sort of like tease this apart from you, you could ask chat to write a piece of content, then have it update itself and just probably infinite number of loops, have it keep updating, just keep changing things. And I don't know that asking it to now do it again, but make it better 1,000 times in a row, at a certain point is not going to be actually making it better, right? So I think it's important that we keep that in mind, because I think this is the dark side of how authoritative it sounds just in the way it delivers its messaging and how articulate it is, that it's not going to be perfect. So I say all that to say that I'm very happy to have ChatGPT as a part of my medical team. but I'm going to defer to Dr. Spencer as my quarterback. I have part of my own approach is every year, usually I'll loop in one other doctor to have other, maybe more esoteric blood work drawn so they can be part of the team. And then I have a few other people that I know personally and professionally that I'll also loop in for to get their feedback. Obviously, ultimately, I'm going to make the decisions, but my concierge, my head, Spencer's the quarterback, right? He's the head of the team. And then these other people, I'm happy to get their way in so I can use some wisdom of the crowds, but still ultimately have a human make the final call. So, but ChatGPT has been, I think, is going to be a useful addition to my team.
It's fascinating. You use it so in such a deeper capacity in that sense than I do. I use it for like really quick and dirty, like nutritional insights on my consumption. I'm like, hey, I just put this in a smoothie. Yeah. What did I just eat?
I mean, I do plan that too, for sure. All right. Well, is there anything else that we haven't discussed, Pete? Anything else you want to share about how you're thinking about AI, or any other things you might suggest that gym owners should keep in mind?
No, just that I have kind of committed myself to actually looking a little closer at how and where it can impact my business here as I head into the spring. Because as I said to you off the call, we are entering the time of year where I don't really make money because I run such a seasonal operation, and it's baseball season, friends. And that is actually one of my initiatives for the next couple of weeks, to become a better student of the AI game as it relates to gym ownership.
Yeah, I think it's, and as a potential first takeaway here, we can probably close where we began, which is what your friend had suggested. I think that's a takeaway for a lot of you, is quite literally just change out Google, start using chat. You can, if you want to take it to the next level, particularly if you create content, you can start to play with some of these things. I mean, we really just like scratch the surface. You can have ChatGPT give you feedback on you or your team's programming. You can have ChatGPT. You can upload transcript of sales calls and have it give you feedback. You can upload your follow-up sequence for ChatGPT and have it give you feedback. And again, I think I'll also caution one more time, it's always going to have criticisms. Right. So whether that actually means it's getting better or not, at a certain point, you are going to have to be the tastemaker. That's the thing that ChatGPT can't do for you and might never be able to do.
It's never going to say, looks perfect, go publish.
Yeah. And maybe as like the final thought here, I do think the thing that we all know that is, I think, destabilizing to all of us emotionally is this is like tip of the iceberg, it seems, which is just terrifying. This is the tip of the iceberg. In the next 1 to 3 years, we're likely to really start to see some disruption because we haven't really seen it yet. Like, people are using it. It's saving some time. I don't think it's really changed the game. Is search a little bit better? Sure. Is it useful for some of these things? Yeah. I think the rise of agents, once they start being able to do more tasks in the real world, is going to be the first tipping point where it's going to start, forgive me, but like, let's be real, it's going to start taking away jobs. Right? Like, probably a lot of like VA tasks are going to start going away because the chat will be able to start to do some of these things. Not literally chat, but AI. And, the thing that'll be most interesting, one thing I've been thinking on philosophically is I would have told you that it was impossible for the AI to really replicate this sort of love and care and connection and seeingness that we humans often need from another human if we want to grow, if we want to heal, if we want to change, right? It's very difficult for most people. Follow me on this tangent. This promise worthwhile for a final thought here. It is very difficult for most people to change in a vacuum. That's why it's great to read personal development books. And listen, if you read them all day long, every day, at a certain point, you're going to start to wash your brain. Things are going to start to change. But for most people, the fastest path to change is some sort of connection with another human. Could be a coach, like what we do, right? If you want to change your gym, it's usually going to be faster when you're working with a coach. You have some accountability and somebody else that's helping create a new version of you, to say nothing of any particular strategy or tactical advice. A lot of people are going to have a hard time really healing from whatever wounds you got from your childhood. We all got them, without some sort of helper person. It doesn't necessarily need to be a therapist, right? Sometimes a coach will do the job. And I would have told you a year ago that I don't see that ever going away. I don't see AI ever quite being able to fulfill that role. But I got to real talk you. I think another thing I would encourage you to play with, and do this with a grain of salt. If you find yourself feeling anxious about something, and I did this once recently and was frankly blown away by the response. And this is maybe where the Mark GPT helped out, because maybe it just knew, like, wow, the kind of coaching I needed. But I was feeling anxious. To be transparent, it's not that big deal. I have I was wearing the Aura Gen 4 and occasionally seeing like artifacts of like 160 beats per minute. So of course, health anxiety here, I'm spiraling, right? The same person that does a 3-page exec summary, you might be shocked to hear sometimes trend towards some health anxiety, right? So like, Spencer's like, I think it's fine. You went to cardiologist a couple years ago. It's not, I think this is fine. These are almost certainly artifacts. And I had chat coach me, right? I was like, chat, I'm feeling kind of anxious. Here's what the situation is. And it coached the shit out of me. It coached the shit out of me. At one point, it said, you are not your resting heart rate, and you damn sure aren't biometric data from a wearable, right? So, which was like amazing. And it made me feel a lot better. And not only that, and I think this is maybe one of the more potentially exciting utilizations of this technology is, yes, you might lose something because it's not a flesh and blood human seeing you. However, you don't feel any judgment because it's a robot, it's a computer, right? And there was some early research into this. Actually, I was talking to a dear friend of mine who's an academic. Apparently, they did some research with soldiers coming home who, and this wasn't even AI, these were less sophisticated chatbot programs, but directionally sort of the same kind of idea, with soldiers getting treatment for PTSD, and the same phenomenon showed up there. They were actually felt safer to be more candid about what was really going on because there was no fear of judgment. Whereas if you're talking to an in-person therapist, certainly there might be some unique things we haven't been able to quantify about that person-to-person relationship. But at the same time, depending on what you got going on, you're going to be aware, like, that's another human over there. You're going to be aware of the way you are or are not being perceived. And that might prevent you from being as candid as you could with a robot, which for all their coldness and, lack of humanity, is not going to judge you. No one else is going to see it unless, like me, you share it with Rosemary Brown, who will be able to see my crazy face in there. She's like, I guess you can have maybe 1 drink per day at Turbofine, but don't have more. So, word of the wise, everybody. All right, Pete, any other final comments here? That was a robust discussion.
No, I can't follow that. That's not where I thought you would go. We're just going to leave it.
Yeah, sorry. I know. I'm sorry, everybody. You're coming with me to philosophy. Yeah, interesting little thing I'll tease here for our listeners. This will be the super fans as we end this here. If you like that kind of content from me, I'm actually planning to start a new Monday-only newsletter that will be opt-in only, that will not go out to the whole list, that I will write once per week, where I will discuss technology, philosophy, moral psychology, nerdy shit that I'm interested in that may or may not relate directly to business. For live you listening, that sounds like fresh hell. But for the super mark nerd fans that want to hear me go off about my analysis of philosophy in a changing and uncertain world, do keep your eyes peeled. There will be an opportunity to opt in. Soon will be added to our footer. And if you don't have interest in that, don't worry. You won't ever hear any of that stuff from me because it's not going to, it's only if you opt into it.
No, people should listen to that one. You pitched that one to us during quarterly planning recently, and I walked away saying, I want to be on that list. And so,
yeah, I'm really excited. I think for certain people, they're like, that are interested in that kind of stuff, and certainly interested in having a deeper parasocial relationship with me. I look forward to seeing you there, and look forward to hopefully engaging with dialogue with you about many interesting, challenging, and thorny topics in being a human in the year 2025. With that said, if you have not had a chance yet to download my book of fitness business secrets, you know what to do. Go to that description link, and while you're there, toss us a bone, give us a rating, give us a review, give us a follow, but not a subscribe, because you might be afraid that'll cost you money. So give us a follow. All right, friends. Thank you so much, Pete. Great to see you. And everyone have a great day. See you next time.
See ya.
Goodbye.